welcome back, everybody, and I suspect there may even be some people tuning into this to our symposium for the first time for this very important keynote address, and we are especially grateful to have Mr. Valentin Inzko here. I'm going to turn it over briefly to David Pettigrew for a full introduction, but I wanted to begin just by simply, since I won't have another direct chance, to offer my thanks for your willingness to be here and to take a place within our conference, Bosnia 25 years after the Dayton Accords. It's been panel after panel, speaker after speaker of very interesting, thought-provoking presentations, and I'm very glad, Mr. Inzko, that you're now available and willing to join us. David, I'll turn it over to you for further introductions.
Okay, thank you, David. Once again, thank you to Yale University and to Southern Connecticut State University for supporting our symposium, Bosnia 25 years after the Dayton Accords. And it's our pleasure to welcome you to our final keynote speaker of the program. We have one additional panel this afternoon, starting at 1:30. But right now, we're happy to welcome Dr. Valentin Inzko, who has been High Representative to Bosnia since March 2009. I'm happy to welcome him to the Yale Genocide Studies program, where he spoke almost exactly 1 year ago. He comes to us today after having addressed the United Nations Security Council yesterday on these same issues. It's difficult to summarize such a distinguished diplomatic career, so I will emphasize Dr. Inzko's diplomatic experience in Bosnia and the region. From 1996 to 1999, Dr. Inzko served as first resident Austrian ambassador to Bosnia and Herzegovina. Then, based in Vienna from 1999 to 2005, Dr. Inzko headed the Austrian Foreign Ministry department responsible for Central Europe and Southeastern Europe, as well as Central Asia and Southern Caucasus. He has had as well postings to Belgrade and Sanjak. The Office of the High Representative is an ad hoc international institution responsible for overseeing the implementation of civilian aspects of the peace agreement that ended the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The position of High Representative was created under the General Framework Agreement for Peace in Bosnia, usually referred to as the Dayton Peace Agreement or Dayton Accords, because it was negotiated in Dayton, Ohio, and signed in Paris on 14 December 1995. So in this capacity, High Representative Inzko has been addressing challenges to the peace over the course of the past decade and itemizing these in his biannual as well as other special reports to the UN Security Council. And I highly recommend these reports to you in order to gain an understanding of the situation in Bosnia. Thus, we look forward to the High Representative's reflections today on the legacy of the Dayton Peace Accords, 1995 to 2020. Welcome, High Representative.
Dear participants, let me begin by thanking Professor Pettigrew and Dr. Simon, David, very sincerely and cordially for inviting me to speak at this week's symposium at the Yale University Genocide Studies program and the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Academic Affairs for organizing this important and timely event, which I believe can make a useful and substantive contribution to policymaking in Bosnia and Herzegovina. As Dave already said, I spoke yesterday to the United Nations Security Council. It is my biannual report, and we can later speak about this debate yesterday in the Security Council. It was quite lively. There were, after the speeches, after the debate, there was another debate without prepared talking points, etc. It was very lively between the German ambassador and the Russian ambassador and myself also, because there are some wrong perceptions what, for example, an entity can do or not, like writing a report to the Security Council, which was not circulated by the United Nations. So it was not a document of United Nations. Yeah, it was a private, say, report written in Banja Luka to the Security Council. Of course, no Security Council member mentioned it except the Russian ambassador. But we can speak later about this and other questions, which are somehow also connected with my speech of today. So let me start with the plus side of the balance sheet. It's always nice and more pleasant to speak about achievements than about stagnation. But achievements have been so big, such landmark achievements, yeah, that it must be mentioned. I was then Austrian ambassador in Bosnia and Herzegovina, so I'm not speaking about my achievements, but I'm speaking about achievements of my predecessors, like Carl Bildt, the former foreign minister of Sweden, like Carlos Westendorp, former foreign minister of Spain, then Wolfgang Petritsch, and especially Lord Ashdown. Lord Ashdown was the last real high representative, yeah, in the memory of people because he achieved so much. And of course, there was also German Minister of Postal Affairs, Schwarz Schilling, and Miroslav Lajčák, later Foreign Minister of Slovakia and also President of the General Assembly, and myself. So, but of course, all together have been somehow the same period as myself. Yeah, they have been there for say 12 or 13 years, and I'm now 11 years in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So let me start again with the plus side of the balance sheet. As we approach the 25th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement, we can look back on a series of achievements that have made life better for BiH citizens. And the first of these achievements, the fundamental objective of the Dayton Agreement is peace. Of course, this may sound banal to you, but no one who experienced war and its immediate aftermath will underestimate the value of this. 25 years ago, the 4 million inhabitants of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and 2 million of them violently uprooted from their homes, which means half of the population, they were reeling from the bloodshed and chaos of the previous 3.5 years. And indeed, myself, I was in 95 in Bosnia and Herzegovina privately. I started in January 96 as ambassador of Austria and Bosnia and Herzegovina. My first embassy premises were in the Academy of Science. Yeah. There was no water, there was no windows. Yeah. And can you imagine if a mother came from Bihać to pick up a visum 300 kilometers and she didn't have the right papers, she would have to go back. Yeah. So we made quite many exceptions. And when this lady, elderly lady, wanted to go to the toilet, she simply went, excuse me, but there was no water. You can imagine how it, there was no heating also in the embassy, which in the Academy of Science, etc. Anyway, there was hope and there was a lot of optimism around in the country. And I wish we had such hope today and such an optimism today, yes. In any case, peace was most important then, although you could see at every corner, Italian and other troops, there were about 60,000 soldiers in Bosnia and Herzegovina, a huge international effort to maintain peace. So just weeks has passed in 95 since the slaughter in Srebrenica, which happened there, and the perpetrators of the genocide were even then, in November 95, like now, when Dayton was signed, they were still moving the bodies of their victims in the hope that the scale of their crime would never be known. So we also have in Slovenia about 650 graves, I should not forget. In Bosnia, we have about the same number. So after the war, it was still easy, even by satellite, to find the graves because you could make pictures where fresh graves have been unearthed or people buried, etc. Yeah? Today, it's very difficult. And today we depend on information, which sometimes is sold for $2,000, $3,000. Somebody would call you and say, hey, I know where your husband is, where your children are, but give me the money, etc. Of course, some others, to find peace of their soul, would pay the money, but others would, of course, decline, because this would be a second humiliation. First, the husband or son was killed, and now they even have to pay to get the place where this one is buried. Yeah. In any case, this was a period in November, December in 95. Yeah. So when we examine what has been done badly or not at all during the last quarter of the century, and when we consider what must now be done, let us not overlook the important fact that peace was established in Dayton, and it has been maintained ever since. It's interesting that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there were no revenge killings. Yeah. If you have now a peace agreement in Nagorno-Karabakh, you can read 5 hours later, there was again shooting or again some killing. Yeah. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, there was no revenge killing for the last 25 years, even if some others tell me in Srebrenica, this and this murder or this and this driver of a bus who was bringing people to execution is in the shop here and I see him every day, etc. Yeah? But there were no revenge killings. Yeah? And peace is very precious still today. People are appreciating it, especially when they think of Caucasus region today, when they think of the Middle East. Yeah? And also David Pettigrew, excuse me, but Kashmir conflict is older than you and it is unsolved. Yeah? And I always have the same problem when I approach ministers, high-level officials, when I say, can you please engage more in Bosnia and Herzegovina? They say, Valentin, we understand, but we have bigger problems. We have bigger problems. We have Lampedusa, we have Libya, we have Syria, we have Yemen and South Sudan, etc. We cannot deal with Bosnia. It's not in New York Times and there are no people killed, you know. I said, yes, you're dealing with big problems, but you're not solving them. You're just dealing with them, but you're not solving them. At the same time, I say, there is a difference between all these problems which I enumerated in Bosnia and Herzegovina. First of all, I should remember you that former foreign minister Sigmar Gabriel and Heiko Maas went twice to Mali in Africa. I understand there are German troops. I fully appreciate. They are friends with the French and they express solidarity with the French. But they were never there in Bosnia and Herzegovina, never. These are the two differences. Bosnia, I'm sorry to say, is in Europe, yeah. It's not in Africa. Secondly, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, he has always time for Bosnia and Herzegovina. He met Dodik already 10 times. Lavrov met Dodik 3 times. So 13 meetings with a regional leader, Mr. Dodik. So they have time. So I say also leaders of European countries should have more time for this country. Also, it's low-hanging fruit. With little reforms, you know, with some effort, we could get a big success. There's another thing that, like the killing in Vienna, the murder came from Northern Macedonia. He met one Bosnian citizen, also 20 years old. It's very sad that 20-year-old people are doing this, you know. He was connected in Switzerland. The weapons at Bataclan and Molenbeek, the weapons in Vienna all came from the Balkans, you know. I think this weapon in Vienna was produced in Kragujevac in Serbia. So not speaking about enlargement, just out of own interest, out of egoistic interest, European countries must take care of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the Balkans because they like to import not weapons, not drugs, but they should import peace from this area, stability, rule of law, etc. So now, some other achievements also, you know. Key strategic initiatives of OHR and international community were enabling freedom of movement. This was very important because we had 4 license plates in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Yugoslav license plate, then a Bosniak license plate, a Croat license plate, and a Serb license plate. With this license plate, people could not travel from, say, Sarajevo to Banja Luka, from Banja Luka to Trebinje or to Dubrovnik, because everybody could see this is a Serb, this is a Bosniak. Now we have neutral license plates, and there was an Alsatian, American, German, French general who invented these license plates, Deputy High Representative Jacques Klein. And of course, Serbs, rightly, they wanted to have Cyrillic letters. And Jacques Klein said, you will get Cyrillic letters, no problem, for the license plates. Of course, he looked at both alphabets, Cyrillic and Latin, and he found out there are 6 or 7 common letters, like K, O, T, J, E, A, yeah? And only these 7 letters are being used and a combination of numbers. So when you come to Bosnia and Herzegovina, you see a license plate, you will see only these 7 letters and nothing else, which are same in the Cyrillic and Latin alphabet. Jacques Klein, a legend also in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So this was Of course, license plates are license plates, but it was important for freedom of movement. Then we invented, after 4 currencies, one single currency. It was called after the Deutsche Mark. It's now called convertible mark, not Deutsche Mark, obviously, we are in Bosnia, but it's called convertible mark, KM. It was changed 1-to-1, and it was pegged until today to the euro. So, and the first governor was from New Zealand, Peter Nichols. When the second governor was due, the locals couldn't agree, but it should be a local, of course. So we gave Peter Nichols from New Zealand, we gave him a BH passport. So he was suddenly a Bosnian, and he served for 12 years as governor. And this is a huge success story. If Bosnia would be in EU today, they would qualify immediately for the euro because the convertible mark is so stable. And I can remember a very moving moment. I think it was 97, when for the first time, a bank in Vienna, close to St. Stephen's Cathedral, took the convertible mark and changed it. So it was really convertible. Because what is the sense you call your currency convertible, but you go to Vienna and you can't change it, you know. Now it's accepted everywhere, and savings in this convertible mark are much bigger per million inhabitants in Bosnia than in Serbia or Croatia or Montenegro, because people have trust in this currency. So a huge success story. Refugee return, about 1 million people returned to their homes, yeah. Annex 7. Biometric identity cards. We have been the first in the Balkans with biometric identity cards, biometric passports, you know, citizen identity protection system, we introduced it, you know, and also a very pleasant issue, development happened for politicians when we introduced value-added tax. All of a sudden, the budgets exploded. We had double the amount of income than before because double the value-added tax was introduced. So this was another huge success, judicial reform, etc. And of course, the last biggest, border police and many other achievements, common flag, common football league. You would be surprised how important it is because we had 3 football leagues, a Croat one, a Serb one, a Muslim one, if you like. But then we created one single football league, which had about 80 clubs, like in England. Later, it was reduced to 28 or 27. Now it's a normal one. But now, teams from Banja Luka play against Mostar, Mostar against Sarajevo, etc. We have one common football league. We have one football league also, one football national team. And they are playing against everybody, you know, like this. So this was very important that people mix, etc., etc. All this was done in the first years, in the first 10 years. And I really must be grateful, for example, to Carlos Westendorp. Under his reign, a common flag was adopted, you know, a common national anthem. And of course, there was one colleague from me, Archie Tuta, in my office, a British citizen. He kept all this, we had a competition for the national anthem. He kept all the proposals in his office. When he went to bed, he kept it in his bedroom because he didn't want that anybody would know who are the candidates for the national anthem. And ultimately, a Serb candidate won, but it was anonymous. Nobody knew it was a Serb, but ultimately it was a Serb composer. And this is now the new national anthem of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is played, yeah, much to my regret. This national anthem has no lyrics yet, like in Spain. You know, Catalonians would never sing some national anthem lyrics about Spain, etc. So we have no lyrics, and when the national anthem is played by an orchestra, then people are humming or whatever, but there is no lyrics. But we have a national anthem. Also, the national flag is has the colors of European Union, yellow and blue. Another success because we had 3 national flags. And I just like to remind you of one small detail, which is quite strange. Yeah, of course, the Serbs have the eagle in the national flag. The Croats have the chessboard, but the Bosniaks, the Muslims, choose a Christian symbol for the national flag. Yeah, the lily. You know, the lily came to Bosnia under the reign of Anjous in Hungary There was a brief period of Anjus also in Bosnia. This is the oldest symbol which was found in Bosnia and Herzegovina in stone. The lily of the Anjus, you can find it also in Canada. In the coat of arms, you can find the lily of the Anjus. Yeah. It is the oldest symbol, and the Bosniaks used it frequently as their own symbol. So now we have one flag, one national anthem, etc., one passport, one currency, and so on. Yeah. Then, of course, there was a moment when Carl Bildt has noticed that progress is slowing down the first 2 years. And then the Peace Implementation Council has assembled in Bonn under Klaus Kinkel, the late foreign minister of Germany, and the so-called Bonn powers were introduced in order to give the High Representative executive powers to accelerate certain developments because certain issues could simply not be solved, and certain issues are not even solved now after 25 years, like the genocide denial law, yeah, like the national anthem, the lyrics after 25 years. But then there was this opinion, let's have the bomb powers, we can make some shortcuts, yeah. We didn't use it always, but we used it about 800 times, and about 200 times nasty politicians were removed. 3 members of the state presidency, I think 2 were Croats, 1 was a Serb, and of course, all those politicians in the Karadzic support network, in the Mladic support network, those who have violated Dayton, those who were corrupt or whatever. So we have removed about 200 politicians, and Bonn powers have used some 800 times. Yeah. By listing all these positive developments, I'm not seeking to paint a rosy picture of a reality that is less positive. On the contrary, I want to stress the successful elements of reconstruction and recovery because they show conclusively that progress is possible. And what yesterday I also said in the Security Council, I criticized Dodik quite frequently. I can tell you later why, etc. But I also praised him because in the first phase, the first 12 years, Dodik was very cooperative. He confirmed that genocide took place in Srebrenica. He said that Karadzic must be delivered to Hague. He has supported all these laws, all the changes, all the transfer of competences to the state level, from the entity level to the state level, like creation also of the court of BIH. Dodik voted in favor. So he had this first phase, 10, 12 years, where he was very cooperative, very correct, and he was a darling of international community, including Madame Albright, who said he brought a breath of fresh air to Bosnia and Herzegovina. And indeed, he did. Later, regretfully, he changed. Yeah. Now, let us look at the present reality. Bosnia and Herzegovina is stagnating. We have now this local ownership phase. Bosnia and Herzegovina is stagnating, and young people are leaving. I mean, you don't need to believe me, whatever I say now, but 500,000 people have left the last 10 years, at least 500,000. Angela Merkel is very happy because they are excellent workers, you know, in Germany. They have her companies, they are in government, they are everywhere, you know. And, but of course, they are missing in Bosnia and Herzegovina, over 500,000 people. They are seeing a future elsewhere. They are ardent Europeans, and they have left Bosnia and Herzegovina in the direction of Europe. A friend of mine recently told me that he spent several days in a hospital to have a surgery, and all the medical sisters, the doctors, were extremely cheerful, very resourceful, and very attentive, you know, but they had meager resources. And while the level of clinical expertise is high, also partly due to the war, yeah, the level of administrative organization is low. Patients have to go from pillar to post, waiting for hours in hospital corridors to be seen by overworked reception staff before they will finally receive the treatment they need. In the health sector, as in many other areas, the systematic problems created by a quarter of a century of partial recovery are self-perpetuating. Bright youngsters who have the brains and the commitment to become physicians face a raft of obstacles, not least sometimes because of money, and they have to pay the study, which is quite expensive, etc. Yeah? So there are quite some problems for young people. This applies also all across the public sector. conscientious teachers such as civil servants and utility workers and police officers and many, many more use their hard-won skills diligently and competently every day. But they are poorly served by inadequate budgets and ponderous administrations. So there is no wonder if people are leaving for Germany, and even doctors, qualified personnel are working in Germany, initially at least, in service sectors like servicing medical equipment or helping all elderly people in elderly homes for the elderly, etc. Although they are doctors, they are doing this job because there is a framework, they can rely on the salary, they are insured, there is a pension scheme, etc. Children can go to good schools and children can go to good hospitals if they are sick. With one word, they just like to live a normal life, nothing else. They don't like to be rich. They like to live in a country where there is good governance and the rule of law. Yeah. So changes are possible, and it is not inevitable what has happened. Just as the international community, coordinated by OHR, successfully delivered key elements of recovery in the decade after the war, it can successfully contribute to a social and political sea change today. And I would like to say also that people, or ordinary people, I'm not speaking about politicians, ordinary people in daily life can display a remarkable degree of decency that is often absent from political life. And these same citizens with robust and consistent support from the international partners can set the country on a new course. And only last Sunday, there was the first mass of a Catholic priest in Yaitse. And it was quite normal that the imam of the Muslim community attended this first primitz, we call it first mass of this young priest. It is also in Yaitse where politicians wanted to divide a small high school into a Bosniak school and into a Croat school. Yeah? But what happened was very interesting. Pupils protested. Pupils said, I am Mehmet, I am Muhammad. I like to stay together with Jovan or Ivan, yeah, in the same school. Also later we like to emigrate. Unfortunately, we like to emigrate together, but we like to stay together in this school. So they got the Human Rights Award, which is called Max van der Stoel Award, after the Human Rights Commissioner, you know, Max van der Stoel, and they got it in presence of Foreign Minister Stefan Blok from Netherlands, and in presence of Frans Timmermans, who was first vice chairman of the European Commission in Brussels. And of course, they got also 50,000. But I think more important is this example of the imam of the Muslim community who went to the first mass of the young Catholic priest and this school, which means to live together is possible. And believe me, when we speak about strange statements like Bosnia must be more Europeanized, you know, Bosnia was always Europeanized, and here always 4 religions live together. The Jewish community since 500 years, the Orthodox people, the Catholic people, and of course also the Bosniaks, the Muslims. Yeah, this was never a problem. Mixed marriages happened, and when Catholic Spain kicked out the Spanish Jews, the Sephardic Jews, they were warmly welcomed also in Sarajevo, and they still speak their Judeo-Espanol, their ancient Spanish language. And when they spoke with Juan Carlos, he always was in tears because this is language of Cervantes. And this language of Cervantes is not spoken anymore in Spain. Yeah, it is only conserved in the Jewish community worldwide, in the Sephardic community. Later there was a mix. And the Jews had to mix with other people. They had to mix with the Ashkenazis, you know. There was a big joke in Sarajevo, who are the biggest friends of the Sephardic Jews? They are the Ashkenazis, you know, but both are Jews, yeah. Ashkenazis only came with the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Anyway, these changes can happen, but I think we have to create again a new dynamic in Bosnia-Herzegovina, a new dynamic. I think that this old Bosnian spirit can again be revived, resurrected, and I think it's a Bosnian society which is still which still exists. There was a lot of damage done to it, but it's a society in which civil obligations and civil rights are well understood. And just to give you one anecdotal example, there is a degree of tenant engagement and participation in the management and upkeep of house blocks that is often entirely absent in other more prosperous parts of Europe. Yeah. Houses are so clean and there's really discipline in these high-rise buildings. And also you can notice an old tradition in these buildings, which is called good neighborhood, but there is a specific word for a neighborhood. It's called komshiluk, yeah, which is much more than neighborhood. Yeah. So when you have such a good neighborhood, you go on vacation, you always give the key to your neighbor. So if the pipes will break or if some fire will break out, the neighbor has a key. Or if you buy a house or you sell a house, you always ask not about location. This is America, location, location, location. In Bosnia, you first ask, who is the neighbor? Yeah, because you will live with this neighbor for many years. Or when somebody bought a house and a friend met a friend and he said, now you have a new neighbor, yeah, and it is your brother, are you happy about it? He said, no, I didn't want to have my brother. I wanted to have a good neighbor. So good neighbor is more important than a brother, you know. And keeping children on the street, people don't care because the neighborhood would care, you know. This is this good neighborhood. This is Bosnian spirit. And this is, I would say, together with the 4 religions which lived here. This was Europe, preempted Europe, you know, in a small way here. And when, for example, a Swedish development agency came after the war and they said, we will give you money to your school, but only if it's multicultural. Then the Bosnian people told them, there is no other school. All schools are multicultural. There are no such schools which are only for one people or for another people. Anyway, I think this should be resurrected and it can be resurrected again. And maybe there should be some more pressure on the political elites from international community, but also from the locals. Yeah. So I think old, traditional, tolerant, secularized Bosnia can be again resurrected. Now about constitutional change. There's also a view that further progress is unlikely without substantial constitutional change. Do we need to change the constitution? Possibly. It would be certainly easier to get things done if communal politics embedded in the Dayton system were replaced by a modern democratic discourse in which citizens have the means to articulate their aspirations and complaints. But the more patient question is, are the current political parties capable of delivering this constitutional change? Clearly they are not, they're also not willing. They had 25 years to deliver and they have not done so. Why should they? Because the status quo suits them. My experience tells me, however, the change is possible. It can be brought about if the international community engages with grassroots stakeholders and if it's a little bit more prescriptive. I like to tell you also about one change which is definitely necessary. And of course, Mr. Simon and Patrick, you know about it. Yeah, it's about minority rights, and it's about the case of Sejdić and Finci. Finci is of the Jewish community, the chairman of the Jewish community. He cannot run for the state presidency. Mr. Sejdić is from the Roma community. He can also not run. But it's not only these 2 persons, you know, Sejdić and Finci. There are about 10% of people, maybe 200,000-300,000 of people who cannot run for many functions in the state. If you are born in the wrong part of the country, if you are a Serb from Sarajevo, you cannot run for the state presidency. If you are a Bosniak from Srebrenica, if you are a Bosniak from Banja Luka or a Croat from Banja Luka, you cannot run for the state presidency. Yeah. If you are a member of a minority group, we have 16 minority groups here, like the Slovaks, the Czechs, the Ukrainians, yeah, Slovenians and Austrians, whatever, you know, whatever was in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, even Italians, you have it here. So they cannot run for the state presidency. Then there was one lady, a Bosniak lady from Tuzla, a doctor, Dr. Azra Zornic. She wanted to run for the state presidency and her particulars were taken. She was Bosniak, she was doctor, she lived in Tuzla. And she said, fine, I will run for the state presidency. And they said, yes, you are fulfilling all the conditions. You are Bosniak, you have a living permit here, etc. She said, okay, I'm Bosniak, but I like to run as a citizen. I don't want to run as a Bosniak. And she was forbidden. And of course, like Sedic and Finci and others, she went to the court in Strasbourg, to the human rights court, and she won. She won, yeah. So now we have quite a few cases. Another lady complained in Mostar that she cannot run because of her wrong place of living. Yeah, if you are on the wrong side, in the wrong entity, you cannot run. She won also. But what is a tragedy? Sedic and Finci, these cases are 11 years old, yeah, 11 years old. And politicians don't even dream about implementing this because they are quite comfortable with the current arrangement that only constituent people can run for the state presidency, but not citizens. Citizens in this country don't exist. Although in the Dayton Constitution, they do exist, yeah? Because Dayton Constitution is mentioning 3 constituent people, citizens, and others. And the others are written with a capital O. So these others are also a category. But local politicians don't allow them to run. So constitution must be changed. Local politicians don't want it. International community has tried it several times. The last time was the Butme process when the deputy of Hillary Clinton, Mr. James Steinberg, came 6 times to Bosnia and Herzegovina, but a change was not possible. Also, Mr. Füle, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, Stefan Füle tried to solve this case of Sedic and Finci, and after 3 years he gave up, he couldn't do it. So there is a huge need for the rule of law. And I will tell you also now, coming to the conclusion, I will tell you also now what ordinary people think about the rule of law. 74% of people find the situation is not satisfactory in the rule of law. But out of the 74%, there are about 46% who think it's extremely unsatisfactory, extremely unsatisfactory. And the others think 14, 15% is mostly unsatisfactory. Only 2% of people think it is extremely satisfactory, only 2%, yeah. But 74% of population find that situation is extremely or mostly unsatisfactory. So something must change, because now, recently, you find that people who are well paid, they are from the IT sector, they have good salaries, they have good incomes, you know. They leave the country because of the lack of rule of law, because of the lack of justice. Also, a survey in Germany amongst Croats from Croatia revealed the following: why have you left your country? And there were 3 main reasons. There is no justice, political instability, and I had no job, yeah? But rule of law is also one of the first 3. From people from Croatia who are in European Union and live in Germany now, yeah? So what we have to do is quite clear. In my view, we have to return in a way, not completely, but in a way we have to return to the first phase, which we had. The first phase was very prescriptive. It was more robust, yeah. And we also set deadlines. Because what is now a big deficiency in Bosnia and Herzegovina? I see 2 deficiencies in general for everything, yeah. There's no sense of urgency, no sense of urgency. As I told you, 25 years, no genocide denial law, 25 years, no equality for the citizens, only for constituent people. And also 25 years, no implementation of many laws which exist, yeah, annexes of Dayton which exist, yeah. So I think we have to return back to more prescriptive approach, to more robust approach, and setting also deadlines, because people cannot wait forever. Regretfully, also this local ownership approach did not work. This is the approach of European Union. They would say basically, you do it by yourself, yeah, and we will bless it. I think this approach doesn't work. And of course, it is the task of local politicians. Like in my country, Allied forces in Austria helped us to get rid of Nazis. We had the Nuremberg trials. We should never forget it's now 75 years of Nuremberg trials. Many Austrians were accused there and sentenced to life sentence or by hanging, etc., death sentences, yeah, because they deserved it, yeah. But Allied forces helped us. And I say always, foreign presence is beneficial, and we should also help the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina together with those politicians who have a good will to bring the country forward. Yeah. Now, I have spoken too much. These are my last words, but of course, I'm ready to reply any question you may have, the participants of this conference may have. I see now we have risen to 42, yeah, quite a good participation, yeah. Thank you. I'm at your disposal.
Very much. Hi, Representative. So we'll open to questions.
I'd certainly like to jump in since none of the other 42 participants are stepping up right this now. I'm going to take advantage of that situation and just ask if there is, the model. When I teach my comparative politics class, I try to get my students to think about consociationalism or ethnic corporatism, this idea of guaranteed spots for different identities, however, ethnic identities, or however one may wish to classify them. And the two major cases are that I use are Lebanon and Bosnia after Dayton. It's hard not to conclude that that model of constitutional model doesn't work. Is there what's the alternative what's the best alternative short of or what consistent with some form of local ownership, so longer term perhaps, not necessarily right now, but what alternative do you see as the most viable way to sort of maintain peace among identity groups through political representation? And I realize I'm asking you, how would you rewrite the Constitution, which is a big ask, but I'm just curious for your thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you call it in English, the squaring of the circle. How is this? Yeah, squaring of the circle. In any case, as you know, I'm ethnic Slovenian from Austria, and I feel perfectly comfortable to be 100% Slovenian, 100% Austrian, and 100% European. Yeah. So, and Carinthian, I'm from Carinthia, yeah. Anyway, but I think squaring of the circle would mean that we maintain this sort of constitutionality of certain people to protect their identity, their language, their culture, Cyrillic script, etc. Absolutely. The Croats are quite frustrated. They don't have their entity and they don't have a TV channel. A TV channel could be given to them. I don't know why not, yeah. But to give them a sort of feeling they're at home, this is their country. And also for Croats, we must be quite fair. Croats have voted in favor when there was this referendum on 1st and 2nd of, actually 28th of February and 1st March 92, there was a referendum. Croats voted for Bosnia and Herzegovina. So without this vote, it would be maybe negative, you know. There was this referendum like in Slovenia and Croatia, and the European Union asked for this referendum and partly supported it also financially. So Croats voted in favor. At the same time, Croats have given up their own entity, the so-called Herzegovina entity, in the Washington Agreement and in the Dayton Agreement, but now they're quite frustrated about it. And Tudjman signed these agreements, you know, when they gave up. Of course, Tudjman was thinking of Croatia. For him, Croatia was more important than Bosnia and Herzegovina. In any case, I think we should have a mix of constituent people and a mix of citizen rights that every citizen can run for any office. We have this, we have a lawyer in my office, a Belgian citizen, yeah, by chance he's Belgian, and he said he can draw such a he can find a solution for this question. Actually, he elaborated four different solutions. Everyone would still be according to the human rights and so on, yeah. But it would favor maybe somebody more or less, but this is all possible. But David, what I didn't say yet, yeah, even with this constitution, even without constitution, like in England, I think in England there is no constitution. If there is political will, if there is trust, you can govern and you can run a country. Of course, in Britain they have also democratic tradition. They have parliamentarism, I think, for 600 or 700 years and so on. Yeah, they have traditions and they have good practices also. But if there is goodwill, like the first 10, 11 years, I told you also about Dodik. Yeah, he voted in favor of many, many laws. Yeah, it's not true that all laws have been imposed by my predecessors, whom Dodik now calls criminals. Yeah, we have the signature, for example, of Radmanovic. He was state presidency member, Radmanovic, who is a Serb from Dodik's party. He signed with his signature the new defense law, where there is Article 84 for NATO membership. So this was a good time with many achievements. And when Paddy Ashdown was High Representative during his time, 236 laws were adopted. If you look back the last 6 years, maybe 20, 30 laws were adopted, but none of them substantial. Yeah. So with goodwill, you can change a lot. What also, because you mentioned Lebanon, I think in Lebanon, you can use and block. You can use vital national interest only in 3 or 4 cases. Declaration of war, I don't know, when your religion or your language is endangered, etc. But in Bosnia, you can use vital national interest for everything, for the Pelješac Bridge, you know, or Bosniaks prevented the establishment of a second channel for Croats or whatever, you know. They used vital national interest. You can use it for everything, just to block. Of course, in Dayton, it was useful if you could have a blocking mechanism so nobody could outvote you or overturn you, yeah. But it turned out that it is now being misused. Blockages are being misused. And I don't want to speak any longer, but 5 people can block the whole state. 1 state presidency member, 1 member of the government. It must be prime minister or deputy prime minister. So 1 state presidency member, 1 from the Council of Ministers, and 3 members of the House of People. Because the House of People has only 15 members. Yeah. So 3 can block the House of People. So 5 people can block the whole state. This made sense in Dayton, but not any longer. Because in Dayton, the weapons were taken away from the armies, you know, different armies. So they got political weapons, yeah. That is vital national interest mechanism, vital entity interest mechanism, which is now being used for everything. But my point is, we should make another effort as international community for a constitutional change. This constitutional change will not mean centralization. Bosnia will never be centralized, never, yeah. But it must function. The functionality must be increased, yeah, functionality and efficiency.
So we're getting a flurry of questions now in the question function, and one question relates to something I believe you said about perhaps the need for a change to prescription, to the international community being more prescriptive, and then having, you know, deadlines. And so this is a question about, you know, what would that mean? You know, for example, to put it in the context of what's going on now, would it have something to do with a law against genocide denial or against the glorification of war criminals? I was reading something in the Sarajevo press yesterday that you said in your report to the UN Security Council about the glorification of war criminals. So I'm just wondering if this might be a context for addressing the idea of prescription and deadlines.
Yes, I give you an easy example. When Sotomayor was appointed, she was, of course, appointed by Obama. Okay, but they checked her verdicts for 20 years back, you know. They checked all her speeches for 20 years back whether she made one, how you call it, racial slur or whatever, you know. So then she was appointed. My idea is also, and it's very crucial, because if we have no rule of law, there is no state. Yeah. My point is, we would have to introduce vetting procedure for judges and prosecutors. And let's have a multiple choice system with 2,000 questions in the first round. Let's have a second round with 1,000 questions, multiple choice again. Then let's have interviews. Yeah. I can tell you, I'm Slovenian, but I'm not Slovenian citizen. Yeah, I'm from Austria. But recently, they wanted to have a new judge from Slovenia for the European Court. So the European Court has a 255, it's called 255 committee. Yeah? And there you have retired judges, elder judges, you know, who are examining the new judges, the candidates. Believe me or not, Slovenia sent one expert on law of the sea, who is the best expert in Slovenia for law of the sea, yeah? And he was rejected. Then they sent a second candidate, most probably a better one even. He was rejected. This is what I cherish, you know, that you have a commission of elderly judges and who are using the vetting procedure or the hearing or whatever you call it, yeah? Yeah. Like you have it with Vienna Philharmonic. People are playing behind a curtain. People are playing behind a curtain. And so we have in Vienna, in the Vienna Philharmonic, 2 Roma musicians who are excellent. Yeah. Then they wanted, when a concertmeister resigned, you know, because of age, they wanted to have a Viennese concertmeister, you know, a male. Yeah. You know who won? It was a lady from Bulgaria, because she was so good. Yeah. And when the son of the director of Vienna Philharmonic also played behind the curtain, he twice failed because he was not good enough. Yeah. So vetting would be such a prescription which I would give. And once we would have good judges, if we would have good prosecutors, you know, the country, we could change the country in 2 years, believe me, in 2 years. Then I have many other examples, but I don't want to go into details. I would put 50% of women into executive functions. I would change completely the public tender system. I would employ here Transparency International, yeah, not some government officials, etc., etc. And we could have quick success very soon with a prescriptive and robust approach.
So we have a couple of questions related to.
Go ahead. I can also collect.
We have a couple of questions related to President Dodik. One is more in terms of, you know, why he changed. You know, sort of what accounts for this transformation he went through, and the other would be your ability to limit his ability to destabilize the country.
Well, what has changed? He told me himself. He said, Insko, I tried very much to be multicultural and to speak nicely about Bosnia and so on. And then I spoke also about economy, and people were clapping like this. He said, but then when I spoke about nationalistic issues, you know, about Serb people, about Kosovo, there was an outbreak of enthusiasm, you know, and people just treated me like a hero. And then he continued this path, you know. He also told me that a professor taught him in Belgrade, where he studied, Milorad, when you wake up in the morning, you invent an issue and you deliver it to the press. Then you will dominate the press for this day. When you wake up next day, you invent something different. You will again dominate the press, you know. And he said, this I'm doing. I'm winning all the elections now with this method, you know. Regretfully, it is a divisive rhetoric, you know. He has said on numerous occasions that Republika Srpska is a state. He said also that Banja Luka is a capital of the second Serb state, like the Patriarch Irine, you know. And he's in Banja Luka. He's very happy to be in the capital of the second Serb state. He spoke about secession, etc. And believe me, he has not done it yet. This is true, partly because there was some foreign intervention from capitals, etc. But it's poisoning the atmosphere. It's really poisoning the atmosphere. Can you imagine you have a partner at home and you tell the partner every day, this marriage is broken, this marriage is artificial, this marriage is abortus, you know. And of course, the marriage is not broken, but it's poisoned, you know, it's poisoned. And this is what we don't need, we really don't need, yeah. Why is not Dodik taking a different path? Say the path of competition, that he would say, our police is better. And indeed, it's better structured, you know, because in the federation, you have 11 police, yeah. Then if he would say, we have the better universities, we have the better hospitals, we have the better public TV, you know, we have the better highways. Actually, he has better highways because he's building these highways with high speed, you know. This would be a healthy competition, but inside Bosnia and Herzegovina. And my example is, for example, Bavaria, which is inside Germany. And when you go to Berlin, of course, you see the embassy of Bavaria in Berlin. But the embassy of Bavaria in Berlin has 3 flags: the Bavarian flag, the German flag, the European Union flag. And that's okay, but it's inside Germany, yeah? Like people in Salzburg or in Tyrol, they don't like Vienna. Or people in Idaho, I don't know, in Pennsylvania, they don't like Washington. In Texas, yeah? But it's inside the United States, yeah? And this is as it should be. And of course, Dayton Treaty does not foresee any separation, and it is memberment also. And Milosevic signed Dayton as a single state, you know, as Bosnia and Herzegovina as a single state in Dayton, yeah. And also one should not forget on 22nd of May, 92, Bosnia and Herzegovina was admitted to United Nations together with Slovenia, together with Croatia, as one single state. Internal administration changed in Dayton, yeah, with entities, with cantons, with Brčko, etc. But on 22nd of May, 92, it was admitted as a single state, yeah. Okay.
Can I follow up on that? Just follow on the specific question that was asked in the chat as well. I'll rephrase it slightly differently, but you mentioned before that the bond powers had been used to remove politicians throughout in the earlier, but much less so recently during this local ownership phase. Is there a red line now where bond powers could come back into play, whether against anyone, and what might that red line look like?
Well, European Union dislikes bond powers strongly. Even if I would introduce, we have now a law, 40% of women in politics, yeah? It was not imposed by me, yeah? If I would increase it to 50%, which everybody would like, you know, everybody would applaud. Or if I would introduce a law about origin of property, origin of wealth. You can't be a rich guy when you had a plastic bag, you know, 20 years ago, but now you're a millionaire. Something is wrong, isn't it? Yeah. So if I would introduce this, I would get huge support by ordinary people. I would be a hero. I would be the king of Bosnia. But still, European Union bureaucracy doesn't like this. Even increasing participation of women to 50%. They say, no, Valentin, don't do it. It's about bomb powers. Yeah. So I have this problem. Or removing a politician, it's not realistic at the moment. There is no support for such a move. Yeah. But I would really be happy if I could use bomb powers sometimes for technical issues. I mean, I give you one example, a recent example, for which I would have an appetite to use bomb powers, which is really outrageous, you know. In times when some municipalities, we have elections in 7 days, 8 days, you know, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, municipal elections. In time when we have municipal elections, when some municipalities have no money for this epidemic, for the corona crisis, for disinfection and so on, you know, they have no money. In time when we have now increased unemployment in Bosnia and Herzegovina, 3 members of the House of Representatives are ordering cars, and each car will cost $65,000, you know. This is, people, this is outrageous. This is really outrageous, yeah. But it's according to the current law. When I was ambassador in Ljubljana, the upper limit was $25,000 for an Austrian ambassador. And we are a wealthy country, you know, but we had an upper limit. Here the upper limit is 65,000 euro, yeah, which is really outrageous. And I mean, ordinary people say, these politicians have no conscience, they have no decency. They're just buying cars. All these cars have massage, they have all these special gadgets and so on. But it's really outrageous, Of course, this is a small issue. It's a technical issue. We should not use bomb powers. But some technical issues should be allowed, to be solved. Removing a politician at the moment, there is no political will in the Peace Implementation Council, and it's not realistic. But we could, for example, with this genocide denial law, we could easily do something positive, because politicians who would glorify war criminals, who would deny genocide, then there would be a law that you could really go after them. Like I said yesterday in my speech, there was this English historian, Irving, yeah, he said there was no Holocaust, yeah. So he got 3 years in prison in Austria. And also, there was a football player last year, he had on his socks the number 88. And he was punished for 12 months conditionally, yeah, because the number 8 is the 8th letter in the alphabet. It's H, yeah. Heil Hitler. It means H, Heil Hitler. So he was, he said, okay, he is a friend of Chinese philosophy. In China, the number 8 is a lucky number, which it means eternal luck, yeah. So, but when police visited his apartment, it was full of Nazi literature. So he was punished to 12 months conditionally because he was young, yeah. So it's important to have such laws about Holocaust denial, about genocide denial, and I think population would agree with it, yeah. And it's not against the Serbs, it is against individuals who are glorifying war criminals. Like Dario Kordic, Dario Kordic, he was welcomed after return. Dario Kordic, he was welcomed with a mass of gratitude, with a Catholic mass. I'm a Catholic, I was really shocked, yeah, that a war criminal, after serving his sentences, he should get a mass of gratitude. I mean, it's really too much.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're approaching the end of our session. I was going to mention that we had, and David, don't hesitate to interrupt or amend my comment. So far, I just was going to mention in the course of our symposium, we had identified several priorities for moving forward, and wanted to share those briefly. Two you've already mentioned, a law against genocide denial and against the glorification of war criminals, but also in very practical terms, an entry to NATO and membership in the EU. These have been, sort of practical suggestions. And there was one other comment made by the first keynote speaker, Haris Halilovic, yesterday. He said he had a proposal for the High Representative, and it was simply that if there are convicted war criminals,
then they cannot run for office.
But he had a positive idea that if they have expressed remorse in their sentencing, he thought these remorseful comments should be posted on billboards in the community, where they apologize and they ask for forgiveness. So it would be a kind of a counter narrative to the glorification of war criminals. I don't know how often this happens. He had one very, very trenchant example of that. But anyway, I wanted to share that. And
this is very good. I hope it will be in your summary. This is a very good example. In this connection, there was another suggestion also, that convicted war criminals, of course, if there is remorse, it's a different issue. But usually 99% it's not. But if a convicted war criminal comes home, he must not be allowed to run for office. Yeah, of course, you can always say, but it is against human rights and so on, But if somebody comes from prison and he was a convicted war criminal, we must ensure that he cannot run for any office anymore after his return. He can vote, okay, but he should not be allowed to run for office. Absolutely not. Can you imagine? I don't know, Momcilo Krajisnik or Radovan Karadzic, he got lifetime sentence, but somebody who came back, and believe me, people would vote for him. Some would vote for him. They consider him, people consider them heroes,
Well, thanks so much again for participating today in our symposium. I'll turn it over to David to bring us to a close and remind people about the next session.
Absolutely.
Thank you, David. And I will follow this conference now from the car. I'm driving now to Austria. We have a family gathering, and I see that there are interesting speeches from St. Louis, you know, very important what the diaspora is thinking. Also the tragic legacy of Dayton Accords, which you have, Dave, I think, yeah, as a speech. And really, I like to have the findings of this conference. It's very important for me. It's very precious, and I'm extremely grateful to you. Extremely grateful. Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Insko, thank you. Thank you for introducing the next panel as well. I was expecting that to be my idea, and you did that for me. Each time that we've met, it's been a delight. I really appreciate your openness, your candor, yeah, as a diplomat and as someone in your position. I know a lot of people would not interpret their duty as involving such openness. It really means a lot, I know, to the academic communities here at Yale and at Southern Connecticut State University, but a broader community of interested individuals as well.
Simon, we must be open at such conferences. Otherwise, conferences have no sense, you know, make no sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And anytime you will invite me to a video conference or in person, I will be happy to come to share with you my experience. Thank you very much.
Well, I assure you we will take you up on that. Thank you all to the audience as well, to the attendees for a series of great questions. I'm sorry that we didn't get to them all, but we will log them and include them in our summary for Mr. Insko. What a reminder again, a second reminder that we will reconvene in just over 20 minutes for the fourth panel, the memorialization panel that Mr. Insko has so well previewed for us. And until then, that will be on this same Zoom website, same bat channel, as it were. And we will hereby take a little pause until then. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thanks.